U.S. President Barack Obama convened a series of meetings today on the crisis in Ferguson, Missouri. The president announced new action today aimed at promoting accountability of local law enforcement and improving policing in minority neighborhoods. He's calling for the purchase of up to 50,000 body cameras for police officers and the formation of a task force on police practices. The president is asking Congress for $263 million for the federal response to the upheaval following a grand jury's decision not to indict former Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson. He resigned from the police department over the weekend. As nationwide protests continued, activists called for students and employees around the country to stage a walk-off against police violence. Arise News' Shahan Remkisoon files this report.
This chant has come to define the message Ferguson protesters want heard. Sentiment shared by 5 St. Louis Rams players at the game on Sunday. Like clockwork, immediately after the match, demonstrators echoed the call for heavy-handed policing to be addressed. After Darren Wilson killed unarmed teenager Michael Brown, police wouldn't dare criticize the point protesters are trying to make. But they sure are slamming the Rams players who showed support. In a statement, the Police Officers Association says, "We are profoundly disappointed with the members of the St. Louis Rams football team. It is tasteless, offensive, and inflammatory. It is unthinkable that hometown athletes would so publicly perpetuate a narrative that has been disproven over and over again." The association demanded the players be disciplined and apologize. But the NFL rejected that call today, saying, "We respect and understand the concerns of all individuals who have expressed views on this tragic situation." Meanwhile, Darren Wilson handed in his badge at the weekend. He says he was told of credible threats to officers and felt it was the right thing to do.
The city manager has accepted Officer Wilson's resignation. Officer Wilson is no longer an employee with the city of Ferguson. There is no severance agreement with Officer Wilson and the city of Ferguson. The city of Ferguson will not be making a severance payment to Officer Wilson.
Shahan Remkisoon, Arise News.
Jonathan Clarke is a news analyst and blogger, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. Jonathan, welcome to Arise America. I appreciate you being here. So here are just the bare facts. The grand jury decided not to bring an indictment charge against Darren Wilson. He has resigned and presumably can live his life any way he chooses. What kind of message do you think that sends to black males, not only in the Ferguson community, but around the country?
Oh, well, Debbie, thanks, first of all, for having me on. It's good to see you, and I wish it was under better circumstances. I think the message of this overall, the overall message coming out of this grand jury decision is a rather disappointing one. The broad message is that a narrative as incredible as the one that we're seeing, or that we've heard so far, which is that a young man can be wounded at a vehicle, run 100 feet away from that vehicle, and then suddenly decide that he's going to turn back around and face again the officer who has been shooting at him. It's a pretty incredible narrative, and if that sort of narrative can stick without having its hearing in an open court, then it makes us question, what else can we look forward to down the road?
Yeah, talk about the significance of the, I believe it was 5 St. Louis Rams players that came out for their game with their hands up in solidarity with the protesters. What's the significance of that to you?
I'm glad to see that, and really what it represents is, there were two deaths that we've seen over the past 3 months or so here in the wake of Michael Brown. The Michael Brown incident. Of course, the first one was Michael Brown's death, and that's unfortunate and sad. The outcome of that actually has been another death, and that's the death of apathy, which isn't so bad after all. We are finally seeing people become awake, or they're beginning to arise, to use your network's name. They are starting to embrace issues, and we're seeing this in a way that we haven't seen, I would say, since the 60s. And back then, you can recall that athletes at that time were really activists. They were involved themselves. Jim Brown was activist, and Carlos, who we're seeing right now, Carlos and Smith. here on the podium at those Olympic athletes at their medal ceremony, raising their fist. You know, we saw that back in the 60s there, and we haven't seen that sort of activism out of athletes since then. Muhammad Ali, you know, he's someone who put his career on the line to stand up for what he believes. It's good to finally see athletes getting involved again, becoming activists themselves, and this is one of the strong outcomes of the Michael Brown incident here.
I'm down to my last few seconds, so let me just ask you quickly. You know, Darren Wilson has resigned because of his concern for his safety as well as other members of law enforcement. Do you think in order for this community to move forward that it's important for the mayor and or chief of police in Ferguson to resign as well?
You know, my view here might be a little bit unpopular, but I'm one of these people who doesn't necessarily always call for resignations right away. I think that they were there when the mess was created. They ought to be there to clean it up themselves. And then if the voters decide that they need to go away, then certainly they should. I think there's a case for the police chief needing to go away, and certainly I think I could get behind something like that. But as far as the members of government, I think they need to stay where they are. I think they need to clean up. And besides, you know, who would want to step into that right now? I think it's a bit unfair to have this mess created on your watch and then to walk away and leave it for someone else to clean up. I think there's an unfairness to that.
Jonathan Clarke, thank you so much. It's good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.